Good morning and welcome back. We are still working on our Grinch quilt. We have a couple more blocks to do before we're ready to put the quilt top together. I am so excited to see this one because I know it's going to be cute and I can't wait to see it. So we're trying to speed this one up so that I can get this one done before Christmas. We're not really sure we're still going to get that done, but we are trying as hard as we can. This block today calls for 3 fabrics. Our first fabric is our white fabric, which is our background. Then we've got our blue, and remember the last block I did, we incorporated light blue into it because the back of the quilt that I wanted to use that fabric on the back has a lot of light blue in it, so I wanted to incorporate some light blue on the front. The only block so far was the last block we did that had the light blue, so I'm going to use this one again in this block and just space them out on the quilt so there's blue in different places. So this is my second fabric. And this one is my third, which also incorporates the light blue. So there's my fabrics. Now we've got to cut them. I've already cut them, but let me explain how I cut them. I've got my first fabric, which is my background fabric, and I need 16 2-inch squares. This block is a little more in depth than the other blocks we've done, but it is cute, so we're going to do it. I know you can do it, so do it with me. 16 2-inch blocks. And this is the background fabric. On one fabric, we need 12 2 3/8 blocks. So this is 16 2-inch squares. This is 12 2 3/8 inch squares. Along with that, we'll need 12 of the other fabrics of the 2 3/8. So both of the fabrics that you've picked will have 2 3/8 inch squares, and both of them require 12 of the squares. Our next piece is 4 of the 4 1/4 inch squares. So these are 4 1/4 inch squares, and this is our background fabric. We'll need 4 of this piece. Our next one is 4 of 2 3/8. This right here was 2 3/8, and this is the same thing, but it's broke into 2 pieces on the quilt, so I've broke it out like that. So when you're cutting this one, you can do 12 or you can do 16 because you're going to end up needing 4 more later. And then the last piece is my center piece, and it's 1 3 1/2 inch square. And for this one, this is the piece that's going to probably be my back of the fabric, back of the quilt fabric. And I wanted to get his hand, that iconic picture of his hand with the ornament. I wanted that one in the front as well, and this is how I'm putting it in there. So that's that last piece. Now we just need to subcut. To subcut, we're going to go through these blocks. For this set, the 16 2-inch squares, we don't do anything with those. For this set, which was the 12 2 3/8 squares, we're going to subcut them one time. So I'm going to take this one, and I'm just going to do a couple at a time. And I'm going to take my ruler and go from corner to corner. And I'm going to subcut these one time. And then put them back where I had them, in the order I'm going to use them. Then I'm going to take my next set, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take them and cut them in half diagonally. I think I might need a new blade. I'll do the same thing with all of these. Or maybe it was just I wasn't holding down hard enough. That's what it was. And then the same thing again. So now I've got all of these cut. And now that set is done. This next set, which was the blue set, I'm going to do the same way. I'm going to line them up and I'm going to cut them diagonally one time. Corner to corner, doesn't matter which corner. Line them up good. Okay, now all of these are cut. This big square, the 4 1/4 square, I'm gonna subcut them, but I'm gonna cut it twice. So I'm gonna line them up. I'm just gonna do 2 of these at a time. You do however you feel like doing it. But I'm gonna cut them this way one time. Lift my ruler. Carefully turn them or don't. And then cut them that way. And now I've got 4 sets of triangles. Do the same thing with this one. If you move them like I just did, make sure you line them back up. I should have my rotating cutting mat out, but I left it at the shop. So I will bring it home and use it here shortly. So there's those. This set is, there's the 4 squares at 2 3/8. I'm gonna subcut them one time. And then I've got my big square that I'm going to leave alone. So now we're ready to put our cutting stuff away and assemble the block. We're going to start with this in the middle. I'll move these up a little so I got room. Put this in the middle. Then we're going to take our last set of triangles that we had and we're going to put them along here and along here, and we're going to make flying geese with these. Got to line it up right. So there's our part of our star. Then we'll take our white piece, which is the bigger set of triangles, the white triangles, I mean, and then put them like this. These were the ones that were 4 1/4 inch square that we cut up into triangles, and you put them like that. We'll take our first squares, the little white squares, and we'll fill in the holes here. This will all fit together better when we have our seams in it, so it's, right now it doesn't look like it's fitting, but it will. Then we're going to take, I'll put these over to the side. These triangles, the ones that were 4 1/4 that we put here, and we're gonna put them right on top of those as well. Thought that was 2 of them, that's 1. So we've got that. Then we're gonna take these 2 sets of triangles, the blue and the multi-stripe kind of looking fabric, and we're gonna make our flying geese. So this one is going here. This one is going here. They're going to alternate. Then this one here. This one here. Here. Instead of having matching flying geese, they're going to be opposite each one. So we've got that like that. Then we're going to build out from that, out from this flying geese, and I'm going to do a square here that has both, and then the same thing on the other side. So I'll take a blue and I'll put it here and this here, and we're going to lay them out we're going to reanalyze this when we get to the end and make sure I don't have anything flipped, because this is easy to do, to get it flipped around, and we don't want to do that. I'm going to continue with building the upper portion of it rather than the lower. I'll come back to the lower. That way it's not as confusing. So you've got your white block here, then you've got a half square triangle set here that looks like that. You've got the same thing but opposite on top of that. So you've got this one on the bottom and this one on the top. So that makes that continue. Then we go to the other side and we put the blue on top and the stripe on bottom right there. Then we put the stripe on top and the blue on bottom right here. Again, we're going to reanalyze this when we get done, make sure I haven't flipped anything. So I've got the stripe with the blue with the stripe. Then I'm going to need a white on top of here. I'll pan out and show you this in just a second. Okay, so I've got this corner white section done here. Then I'm going to finish this top off by a blue here. And you can tell that because this is supposed to keep going. So that would be there and this would be here. So this would be here. And then a white one, the triangles, white triangles that we had left over, goes right there. I'll do the same thing here. I'll put the white triangle down. And then the blue will go here because here is blue. Now here will be blue. Stripe is here, so stripe will be there. Then I've got 3 squares in the corner to corner it off. Then I've got a blue here, so I've got a blue here. Fill my triangle in. Then I'll have a stripe here, which means a stripe will be here. And then a blue is here, so that tells me a blue is here. Triangle, stripe, and then right here I've got a missing little set. So if this is a stripe, then this is a stripe, and then there's my blue. Then I've got the white set here, 1, 2, and 3. I'll have a flying geese set here. No, I've got the flying geese here. I've got the 2 triangles here. So if this is blue, then this is going to be blue, and this is going to be stripe. And if that's stripe, then this side will be stripe, like that, and then blue here. I've got my whites here. I'll have a blue continue here, just like that. I'll get my triangle to make my flying geese. My stripe will continue here. This is blue, so here is blue. My triangle and a stripe and a stripe here. Then this here was going to be a blue, with a stripe. Okay, so that's there. We gotta fill in this hole with the blue and the stripe. Then this will go here, here, and here. And then this one goes here with our flying geese. And then this one will go here. This one will go here. And our last piece will go here. So now we'll kind of analyze it, make sure we've got it right, because this is a lot of pieces. You'll have two white, flying geese. Then this row is going to have the half square triangles around the flying geese, and they should make these lines. So this stripe line is good, this blue line is good, flying geese, white. Down the sides should be flying geese. They're right. All these points should do like this. You have these to make like a straight line all the way around it. And to me, it looks good. So now we start sewing it together. Because this is a lot of little pieces, I am not going to bother it at all. I'm just going to slide it with my mat over. Well, before I do, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to start sewing one row at a time. I'm not starting in the middle on this one. I'm starting one row at a time. So I'll take this one to this one, put them right sides together, and I'll sew down this line. Then I'll take the next one and do the same thing. So let's get started. So these two, everything's a 1/4 inch. All these little pieces will be worth it in the end, because this is going to be a cute block. Then I'm going to iron everything open as I go along on this one. So I'll put that back there. Now I've got a flying geese unit right here. What I'll do with this first row is I'll sew this flying geese together, this flying geese together, then I'll sew those white squares on the outsides to it. So I'm going to take this first unit like this, and I'm going to sew it together. I'll put this one right side together, stitch down this line. Iron it open. Then I'll take this one and I'll put it right side together on the other side, and then stitch down the side. Now this one has a lot of little pieces. So to not get it confused and to make sure I don't put it back in the wrong spot, that's why I do it this way. I'll take that flying geese unit, I'll put it back there, I'll do the next one. I'm going to do it row by row, and once I finish that top row, I'll push it up a little bit, and then I'll start the next row. I just don't want to get these out of sequence, which would be easy to do because there's so many of them in this one. So I'm going to do the same thing on the flying geese here. So one on one side, and that stripe on the opposite side. Iron it open. Sew this one onto this side. Line it up. Iron it open. I doubt with this one, I'm cutting these dog ears off now, but I doubt with this one I'm going to cut all these dog ears off because there's so many and I don't want to get them confused in their location, because if I get them mixed up, it's going to throw my whole block off. So I'm just going to leave them. But that one goes there. Then I've got those 2 blocks on the end. So I'll sew these 2 blocks together, the 2 white squares in the corner. And the easiest thing to do if you're doing this along with me is take a screenshot of the block. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to take this first row, and this was the corner piece. So I'm going to flip it right side together and sew these white squares on the outside. Then this was the next piece, so I'll sew it like that. 1 flying geese to the other flying geese. And if when you're doing this block, if you're doing this quilt with me or one like it, if you don't like a particular block, like if you don't like this one or the one we did before or whatever, don't do it. Do another block. Just duplicate another one with different fabrics. It'll look totally different. Now I've got that. Then this one on the end. So I'll sew it right sides together. And then my first row is done. I'm going to do the same thing with my next rows. So there's my first row. I'm going to put it right back in place so I know where it went. Then I'm going to take this next row. I'm going to sew these half square triangles together and the flying geese together, and then I'll sew the rows together. So I've got my first half square triangle in this side, put it right sides together, stitch down that long side, and when I put it back, I need to make sure I put it back in the same place that it was a minute ago, the same direction. Which is going to be like that. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this block. And this block had the blue on top. So I'll just remember that. Line these up. Stitch down the long side. And blue was on top, so blue's on top. I'm going to go all the way across with my blocks here and my flying geese here, and then I'll sew it into one row. So now I've got my second row and all my pieces are sewn into larger units. Now I just need to sew them together. So I'll take this white one and flip it here, sew these 2 together. Then iron it open. Take this one that was laying just like this and put it together just like that. And stitch it 1/4 inch. Iron it open. And I'm going to keep going all the way across this row. So this goes here, then this is going to go to here. I'll flip it right sides together, sew it down. I'll do this whole row. I'm going to do all these rows the same way, and then I'll come back to you. I've got my first 2 rows sewn together up here, and I'm pushing them up to the top because I don't need them yet. I want to keep them in order, but I don't need them yet. Now I've got these. I was going to do row by row, but I've changed my mind on that. Because I've got these flying geese on the outside, I'm not going to be able to go straight across this row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew my flying geese together. These two bottom rows are going to be just like the top, so they can be later. But this section here needs to go as a section. So I'm going to sew flying geese and flying geese, and then I'll sew this row and this row and this row and this row, this row, this row. And then those three will be in one section. I'll sew them all together. Then I'll do the bottom two rows just like I did the top two rows. All because of these flying geese right here. Because I can't really go and sew this to this yet because it doesn't fit. So I need to make it fit. So I'm going to do these flying geese here and then do each row, the three middle rows up and down like this. So let's get started with this flying geese. We're going to do it the same way. Sew these right sides together. Iron it open. Put this one on there. And every time I sew something now, I'm going to put it right back in place because I don't want to get these out of place. So I know that goes right there. This one, I'll do the same thing. Make sure it stays lined up. So this one to this side. Open, and I'll put it back in place. So what I'm doing is these sections here, this right here, this bottom row, I'm leaving alone. So now I've got these. Now I can take this unit, this whole row, and do it. So I'll stitch down this side of these two half square triangles. This one goes like that. Then I'll take this one. The blue's going to be on the top right square. I just got to remember that, so I'll tell myself that, so when I put it back in the right spot, I put it back in the right spot, not going the wrong way. This one's easy to get mixed up in the directions of blocks, so tell yourself what you're doing as you're doing it so you don't get it mixed up. Blue's in the top right corner, that was right. And then before you get too far along, always reanalyze it and see if it still looks right. It does, so we're going to keep going. This is a flying geese. Oop. Do the other side of this flying geese. goes right there. Now I could go ahead and sew these together so they're not going to get mixed up. So I'm going to sew this to this so they don't get out of place. Line them up. Iron them open, and it goes like that. For this middle row, it goes like this. This is my first row that I've sewn together. I'm going to sew these together just like that. Then this is my middle star that I've already sewn together with the flying geese around it to make that star look. And I'll do the same with these. But when you put these together, you'll always want to make sure that when they go together, that forms a white square. So that's how you know if you've got it on right. I just sewed it on backwards, so I took it out, I fixed it. That's how you can tell if it's right or not. I knew it didn't look right because I didn't have that block, and now I've got that block. So I'm gonna sew it back together the right way this time. This one to this one. That's why I say as you go along with this one, just make sure all the squares looks the same before you get too far into it. Had I not noticed that I sewed that one backwards, then I would be tearing the whole block apart to fix that one little spot, and you don't want to do that. So I'll put it back in place. That white block is still there. This goes right here. So I'll stitch it together. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do these two sides, and then I'll sew all this whole row together. I've now got all my rows sewn together. My middle one is one big row, and then these two below and two above it. When I put them together to make sure that I've sewn them right before I actually sew all these rows together, I'm going to make sure that this center looks like a star, and I'm going to make sure I've got 4 white blocks on the outside, and I've got my 3 out here, and then these should make points. See how this is going like this? These should look like that. So now we are ready to sew these rows together. I'm going to do it just like I do all the other rows. I'll move this aside and work with the top 2 rows first. Sorry, that one fell. I'll work with these 2 first. I'll flip them right sides together. And there's so many seams on this one that I want to make sure they're lined up. So I'll take these 2 seams right here, this seam and this seam, and line them up. And just roll them to the top to where you can tell they still line up right. Pin it. I'll do the same thing with the next seam, and I'll pin it. I'll go to the next seam, which is going to be, let's just start at the end. Line those up. Pin it. Line these seams up and pin it. And then these should lay flat. And it does. So I'm going to pin it just to make sure it stays in place, and I'm going to stitch down this long side. Take my pins out as I get to them. And then once that row is sewn, I'll do like I always do and take it to the iron and iron it open. And then I'll put it back in place. Now I've got these to do the same thing with. I'll do these the exact same way. First, I'm going to pull this one out. I'm going to do these the same way I did that one. And then I'll put this one back in and I'll just line these up and we'll have our block completed. Once you sew all your rows together, you'll end up with this. And now our next step is to square it up. We're going to take our 12.5-inch ruler and we're going to line it up on this block. And we want to center it. And when we get it where we want it, we'll take and cut off one side. Then we'll cut off this other side. Hold the ruler down. Take the ruler off, turn it one time, turn it again. Now these two sides are lined up, so I can line it up right here on the ruler. Hold the ruler back down, press down, and cut down this one side. Hold it down and press down the top side. And what you're left with is a 12.5-inch squared up block. When you get done, your block will look like this, and you're ready to put it in the stack with the other ones so that we are ready in another, I think it's one more block maybe left to do before we can put it together into our Grinch quilt. And well, that's the block. If you decided that you don't want to do this block or one of the other blocks, just duplicate a different block in there or pick another block. There are lots and lots and lots of 12.5-inch blocks out there that you can pick from. So just pick some and go with it. It doesn't have to be the exact same as mine. You can do anything you want to do. So don't let that hold you back. If you've decided this one is not one for you or one of the other ones is not one for you, just pick a different block. It'll be cute no matter what block you put in it. That is all for today. Until next time, you guys have a great day and happy quilting.